Guys. Claude Opus 4.6 just released 8 minutes ago. What are we even doing here? 28 minutes ago, sorry. We got to stop the show. We got to go use the new AI. What if it is AGI finally?
I think that would involve more than a 0.5 to 0.6 release.
Are they really following semantic versioning?
Yeah, who knows? We got iOS 26.
Come on. True AGI, that's at least a 5.0.
That's what they were theorizing they were going to release. So, I mean, they've been having a bunch of downtime this week. Not that I would know.
You have to etch your code into stone with your axe.
Yeah. I had to get the hole puncher. Dude, I discovered something this week and I'm going to share it because it was blowing my mind and I don't want someone else to run into this. So I was working on a turbo stream in a controller and I was like, all right, when I press this button, it'll hit this controller and this turbo stream will execute and then it will update my page. And I'm like, bing, bang, bong, super easy. And I'm testing it and I'm like, it's not working. And I'm like, that's weird. I swear I know how to use turbo. And then I was like looking at the logs and it said processing controller. And then it showed the action name and the action name was not create or update or destroy, which it's supposed to be. It was some completely random thing. And I was like, why is my controller trying to hit the new comment action in my controller, which does not exist, is not in the routes. And I firmly am anti breaking rest like that. So I would never have done that in the first place. And I'm losing my mind trying to figure out what the hell is happening because there's no reason this should be happening. I'm staring at the routes. I'm going back over it, fine tooth comb. And like 10 minutes later, maybe, I was trying to get Claude to help me and it wasn't helping me. And then suddenly it was like, oh, you have a private method called action name in your controller. That's overriding Rails' built-in action name.
Hey, that's really nice that it found that.
I know, because I don't know if I would have figured that out
soon
anyway.
Yeah, I forgot that exists because I almost never use it. And you can also ask like params action and it will give you the same value or whatever. So even if I do need it, I don't usually use action name. So that's pretty awesome. Like that's one of those things that it knowing the context of like Rails itself, being able to like see into the code that you are not directly looking at, that's really handy. That's nice.
It definitely saved me some more time of losing my mind because at this point I was having like a manic episode because I was like, why is this happening to me? But yeah, it was really interesting. I didn't even know that was a thing you could do. I was like, why is my private method doing this? I had so many questions and I was like, whatever, I can rename this variable and get on with my life.
Yeah, no, that's great. I like that a lot. You reminded me of, so yesterday morning, I was helping a Hatchbox customer because their Rails credentials wouldn't decrypt. And similar story, Rails assets precompile runs. I put in the correct master key in the environment variables for Rails master key, and it's not decrypting. And so obviously, write in, need some help with this. Don't know if it's a problem with Hatchbox or whatever. Hatchbox doesn't have anything to do with this because we just assign the variable and run the command. So it's definitely some issue with your code. I'm poking around and like, I've seen this before where it's like, Windows line endings in one of the files, or there's like, sometimes you can have like a required new line or a required no new line in one of the files, and that will trip it up. And I was poking around looking at stuff like that. But what it turned out to be was, and the first message I sent the customer was like, hey, if you're using environment specific credentials, you have to make sure you use production.key, not master.key. And that's what I'm used to doing. But he assured me like, no, I'm not using that. Well, I finally am poking around and I see that config credentials production.yml.enc, the encrypted YAML file, exists, which means that Rails is going to attempt to decrypt that as your credentials file, not config credentials. And deleting that file fixes it. immediately and it's able to decrypt. But the trouble is really that the Rails assets precompile command would raise this active support message encryptor invalid message error with no context. Like that was just basically a wrapper for something went wrong when OpenSSL was trying to decrypt this file. And it's caught and raised. And I remember, like, if you use the credentials command and something is wrong with that, like if you have the wrong key for the production file or whatever, it will tell you, hey, we couldn't decrypt this. Did you use the wrong key? This doesn't seem right. Like Rails should actually raise that message error here. Like the error invalid message should not be without some context. It should tell you which file it was trying to decrypt. So I made a PR to Rails yesterday that went and added an error message to that so that it's basically in the encrypted, there's multiple layers of this. So there's like the credentials command, but there's also like, it's not documented and it's hidden when you run like Rails-T. It's like encrypted or something. There's basically like a subcommand that you can just encrypt any file you want. The credentials ones just know the locations based on the environment. And it's kind of like a little layer on top of that. And then inside of those, there's the encrypted configuration in active support. And then there's like encrypted file. And so there's quite a few layers of this. So I ended up going into the encrypted configuration stuff and rescuing from that invalid message, because there's like many layers in Rails that might rescue from the invalid message error. And you want to just try to do that in the most logical place and not break everything. And that PR might be quite a pain if you end up changing the lowest level. You got to go everywhere above that and make sure those all still work. And those aren't necessarily like thoroughly tested in the test suites. Anyways, I ended up making a PR for that. We'll see if it gets merged or not. But I was like, this is one of those things that happens very rarely, because most of the time, like, there's not leftover credentials file like that. And so when you do run into that, it's quite a pain to debug. And it was just one of those moments where I was like, I think I could probably save myself and everyone else a little bit of time and trouble in the future. So hopefully that does get merged, because I ran into the same thing. It's like, oh my gosh, I could have gone down the rabbit hole for a lot longer, but luckily I've kind of seen this and I'm familiar with how to debug it, and it ended up finding the solution pretty quickly. But it's one of those cool moments of like, why don't we go and improve this for everybody if we can? So fingers crossed somebody like Raphael will see that PR and merge it, but we'll see.
Well, he says he listens to the show, so
yeah.
Send
them out here.
Hey, Raphael, can you look at this PR for us?
I'll have to put that in the show notes.
Production monitoring can be complicated. There are tons of tools and techniques, but you just want to know that your app is up and your users are happy. When your customers encounter a problem, you need clear, actionable intelligence, not walls of charts and reams of logs. That's why they built Honeybadger, the monitoring tool you've always wanted, a tool that's there when you need it and gets out of your way when you don't. With Honeybadger, you'll know when critical errors occur and which customers are affected. You'll be able to respond instantly when your systems go down and improve the health of your systems over time. Plus, you can fix problems before your customers can even report them. Honeybadger is the application health monitoring tool built for you, the developer who cares about a quality product and happy customers. Start monitoring today at honeybadger.io. It's free to get started and setup takes less than 5 minutes. Once again, that's www.honeybadger.io.
That also reminds me, I guess yesterday was just the day of fixing issues in other people's libraries, because this started, I don't know, recently, but there's some bot or some malicious user or just some broken link somewhere that on GoRails, it would hit pagey. Normally in the URL, you have page equals 1, 2, whatever. That ends up being parsed out by pagey, takes the string, converts it to an integer, and then it's able to like grab page number 2 from your database. Well, someone was tampering with that param and had done page open close square brackets equals 2. So Rack and Rails ends up seeing a page is actually an array with a string of 2 inside of it instead of a string. And Pagey had just assumed it was a string. So it calls too high on whatever the value is. So it was blowing up for that. And then there was another request I saw through Honeybadger that was like page square brackets and like $ temp or something square brackets equals 2 or whatever. And I was like, somebody's doing a hash version of this. And like Rack will basically parse those 3 types: strings, arrays, and hashes. And of course, like any combination of nested arrays and objects or hashes with strings and stuff inside of them. So I got looking at Pagey and was like, because the errors that it raises is no method error. And I was like, I don't want to rescue from that. That's so generic. What if I make mistakes somewhere else? Do not want to rescue from something that generic. So ended up poking around at Pagey and realized here's the magic trick. When you call array or hash to string, it will make it start with a square bracket or a curly brace. And when you call 2i on that string, because the first character is not an integer, it just returns 0. So the fix is literally calling the page value, page param value, 2s, 2i, and boom, that issue is solved. And any of the tampered variables of like arrays or hashes just magically return 0 and get ignored. I don't know, maybe there's a case where somebody doesn't want to handle it that way and they want to redirect you in that case. I'm sure that like you could expand that solution in Pagey to raise an exception if you set a config for it. But I was like, look, if somebody's just screwing with this stuff, let's just return page 1. And that's kind of already how they handle it. The intention in Pagey is like, if you specified page -1, then we want to return page 1. Never go below page 1. So they're already trying to handle a little bit of that. So it turned out super slick. No conditionals, no new exceptions to add, no nothing. Just a simple 2-string, which is basically a no-op when you have a regular situation of a string of 2. It's just going to return self when it calls 2-string on a string. So that's super easy and doesn't really add any overhead or anything. So that was my 2 PRs of the day on little things that were like, yeah, I think this could be a little bit easier. I get less Honeybadger errors. I get less customer support tickets when credentials can't be decrypted, that sort of thing. It felt very fulfilling at the end of the day to like solve a couple of those problems that hopefully I'll never see ever again.
Nice. I like that. That's one of those things. It's like people be doing stuff. Why have they done these things? I don't know, but whatever.
It is one of those things where like, okay, I get that sometimes a user might copy a URL and miss a couple characters at the end, but this was clearly somebody tampering with it. And whether it was a human or a bot doesn't really matter. Crap. We didn't do any type validation of that. And I guess we should. And so you have to deal with those exceptions here or there. And if you have something so generic like a no method error, it's like, what the heck do you do? That doesn't really seem like something I should be solving in my code that generically. So it's either like introduce an additional error into your pagination library that you can handle, or just try to like smooth it over, which I think was in general. I don't want to deal with any exceptions from Pagey. If somebody's screwing with things and it's wrong, just reset it and like send them back to page 1. I don't care. If they're messing with things, that's on them, not me. So hopefully that's a good solution. But there were always those times where like, sometimes I do want to know about this if somebody tampered with it. But other times you're like, nah, screw it. This does not matter.
Yeah. I think you solved it in a nice way too. Yeah, just go back. That's what I would want to happen. That's the behavior I would want anyway.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So we're at Pagey version 43 now. So if that hasn't been solved by now, then I don't think people really care about the other exception that they could choose how to handle it. It seems like a good solution then. So That's what I landed on. But that's also one of the tough parts about, you get into like, I want to fix this bug in Rails or improve this thing in Rails. And it's like, what in the world do I need to think about here? Because I know my use case, but I'm not Raphael, who can miraculously have every Rails application ever made kind of in his head when he's like analyzing a PR to decide, is this a good implementation or not? There is so much context that you have to have when you're doing that as a thing to Rails. Because like making this little error exception change is like, I can't just go modify invalid message. I mean, I guess I could maybe add an optional argument or something, but it feels like we should introduce a new exception. But if we do that, we need to make sure that the old one is handled the same way. That's maybe a breaking change if applications are relying on that. So the implications just quickly drown you in decisions sometimes, and it's tough. But even if it just starts a conversation of how we can improve it, and Raphael says, no, go do this instead, then it's like, oh, great. We have they see a different direction then. Yeah. I've learned enough, and I didn't put too much time into it. And so that's good. And it's like, if you did do something bigger, you should probably just ask the team first and say, hey, I'd like to fix this, but here's a couple options on how we could solve it or whatever. Maybe you have another idea, and get permission or some guidance ahead of time before you waste days of your time, the days of our lives, if anybody's old enough to get that reference.
No.
I am unfortunately old enough for that.
I was going to say, Andrew doesn't know what the hell we're talking about.
No. No, I don't.
Be glad, Andrew. Be glad.
All right.
Hey, David, you are a co-host, organizer, co-chair. I don't even know what a co-chair is.
How do
the title?
You were a co-chair.
How do you know? But what does it even mean? Ufuk and I didn't sit in like a love seat together, because that would be like a real co-chair situation, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to tell you what it means just so we could. It just means you're the chair, but you're doing it in conjunction with others.
Well, what does it even mean to be a chair?
The committee chair, if you're serving on a committee, the chair is kind of the person who leads the discussion or...
No. If I Google this, a chair is a piece of furniture designed for one person to sit on.
It's probably going back to like the throne, right? The guy on the throne, the guy on the chair was the one.
Okay. I get it.
Some Game of Thrones stuff has been coming through my YouTube.
What if we... Okay. I've always enjoyed, like, imagine you get on a tour bus or something in a city you've never been to, and you don't realize that it's a fake tour, and so somebody's just making up a bunch of BS about the city. Why has nobody done this with an AI yet, where it's just giving you back gibberish all the time? But it sounds extremely realistic, but it's always wrong. They're all trying to be accurate. What if we tried not to be accurate?
I saw a story the other day where someone like ChatGPT'd something in her backyard and had to go to the hospital because it was wrong. I don't know if she ate something or like did something with it. I don't know, but
no big deal.
No big deal.
Are you tired of babysitting your job queues? Let us do it for you. JudoScale monitors and autoscales your job queues so you can stop babysitting and get back to coding. We support Sidekick, SolidQ, GoodJob, and just about every other job backend in Rubyland. And of course, we autoscale your web services too. JudoScale scales up your apps faster than any other autoscaler, so request timeouts and backed up job queues are mitigated before they become a problem. JudoScale has a free plan you can use forever, so there's literally no risk, whether you're on Heroku, AWS, Render, or any other cloud platform. Visit judoscale.com and get your job queues under control.
What were you going to ask before we got into this chair conversation?
Is it upholstered? Is it wood? Is it metal? What kind of chair are we talking?
I don't think we've settled on a material for the chair yet.
Okay. So the Ruby Gala.
Yeah.
This is a new thing around RubyConf. Is this right?
So this year, being their first year, from what Ali Vogel was saying yesterday, and some calls that we had with her. This year, it's kind of connected to RubyConf. It's happening at the same venue. It's happening the day before the conference. It doesn't sound like that's always going to be true, that they're going to try and give the two different events some separation and let them kind of breathe on their own in the future. But this year, it's kind of connected to RubyConf just by virtue of when and where it's happening.
That kind of makes sense. Like if you're trying something new, it's like, we've already got the venue locked down. We could just add a day and it's not that much extra complexity. We probably already paid for rentals for tables and chairs and catering and whatever. So it's probably a lot less risky.
And like you mentioned, it's a new thing that they're trying. So hopefully it goes well and generates the results that they're hoping for in terms of fundraising, so that it can go forward in the future. But, a lot of that is going to depend on how it goes.
So give me the rundown, because I've read a little bit about it. I didn't even read the official announcement yet from Ruby Central that went.
I haven't read anything about it, so dumb it all the way down.
Yeah, and our listeners probably haven't either. So let's hear the pitch, Mr. Co-Chair, upholstered metal wood.
Right. So we're having a Ruby Gala to dress up. The intent is heavily that it's a fundraiser to support Ruby Central, but also wanting to kind of honor a bunch of people who have contributed and given back to the community in significant ways. I was not a part of the conversation in terms of the creation of the awards or selecting the honorees. All of that was done before I was invited to join the conversation as a co-chair. People like Matz, who created Ruby, and I think David Allen Black is on the list, and Nadia Oduayo. All of the people on the list are just kind of like, yeah, I've got no complaints about anyone being honored or given some kind of award for contributing to the community, because all of these people are just hugely recognizable names in the Ruby community. So it's kind of fun event. It's going to be kind of a two-tiered ticketing system where like the more expensive ticket gets you into the actual event with the dinner, and I think it's an open bar. And so for people that find that appealing, there's that aspect of it. But then there's going to be a cheaper ticket for kind of like the after party afterwards. Or like if you can't or don't want to do like the big formal event, you can come to the thing afterwards for much cheaper. But
you still haven't really told me what this is. I can't even just define Gala for you. Like, is this a black tie event? Is there dancing?
It's like a fancy get dressed and have fancy food dinner and presentation for the awards and that type of thing. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Interesting.
It's definitely a new idea. I can't think of any related type of events that have been in the past.
Is there going to be a hack day this year too?
For the conference itself, yes, sort of. So at the time of recording, this hasn't been announced yet, but by the time this episode comes out, it will be. So I don't feel bad about saying this. I'm also going to be on the program committee for RubyConf this year as well. And so we had our first kind of call with the Ruby Central folk yesterday to kind of start having those conversations about conference session topics.
The tracks?
Tracks. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew, for reading my mind. The track topics.
The legs for the chairs.
Right? Yeah, that exactly. And so one of the things that Ali brought up was that there were apparently some feedback from conference participants last year that if you didn't want to participate in Hack Day, there really wasn't anything else for you to do. And so a lot of people just kind of left and did their own thing for the day for whatever reason. So apparently there was enough kind of negative feedback around Hack Day that what they're thinking about doing this year is kind of pulling the Hack Day portion of it down to like the back half of the day. So like the first half of the day, have a keynote, have a couple of presentations. And then if you really don't want to do any kind of Hack Day community work, you have a half a day to go do something else.
I like that better. I've had that complaint about Hack Day too. It's like, it made more sense than when it was at the end or the beginning, and it was like an optional day that you could pay for or not. But I don't like that it's in the middle because I'm the type of person like, dude, I'm on vacation. Okay. I don't want to go sit in a room with a bunch of sweaty dudes and write code. Like, ugh. But I've only like gone to Hack Day like once for like a few minutes and like was helping someone I knew on their project. But I was like, I'm not really interested in this. So this is like something I'm paying for, but I don't really want to attend. And I would just go venture out into the city, which that's the type of person I am. Like, I want to go like experience the city and do stuff in the city. So it's like, if there's a whole day where we're not doing anything, like, yeah. But I do like that better of it being like in the back half of the day better so that it's not like a full day is wasted.
For me, because of how I tend to handle those types of situations, I've usually have a hard time inserting myself into a social situation or a social circle that's already kind of established. And so I've usually had a hard time with Hack Day anyways, with one very shining, brilliant exception of, working with Nadia for RailsConf 2 years ago, I think now. It's really hard for me to kind of wander around and start a conversation with an open source maintainer and say, let's work on something, because I don't know anything about anything. And so at least that's how the conversation goes in my head. And so it's just like, yeah, that's a hard thing for me. And I imagine other people to want to just walk up and do if they don't already have that comfort level with a particular person or a particular project.
I think Chris and I are lucky in the fact that we've been doing this for so long. We know so many people that it's like, I can go walk around the room and be like, oh, I know this person. I'll go talk to them.
And they know you and they will come up to you.
Right. But I sent my brother to Hack Day in Philadelphia this year because I was like, go learn some code, bro. Like, go talk to some people, trying to teach him how to market himself a little bit. And
oh, it's so hard.
But I think I ended up finding him like sitting alone later. He's like, I wasn't really getting much out of it. The sessions that were, or what was happening, and I couldn't really find anywhere I kind of fit in. And I was like, yeah, that's tough. I feel like the majority probably feels like that.
I remember feeling like that at the beginning of my career, where I felt like what I really need is more experience with the code and more confidence with the code, because that's my job, is the code. In hindsight, I think it's an embarrassing amount of time. It took an embarrassing amount of time to get to the point where I realized, well, every piece of code I write, at some point, I need to worry about the human on the other end of that and whether it's solving their problems and thinking about it in human terms instead of just code. It really changes your mindset. And until you get to that point where you're really thinking about the people on the other end of it and the problems you're trying to solve, sometimes you're just not ready for that conversation yet. So you focus on the code.
Yeah, I got really lucky because one of the only useful courses I took in college for computer science was taught by this older, he had been a project manager. I think he worked for the government at some point. It was like a project management class or whatever. And he, at one point, was like, I know all you guys are here thinking like, yeah, I'm going to become a coder and I don't have to talk to anyone. I just sit in my freaking cubicle and I write code. And he's like, I'm here to tell you that's not true. He's like, the majority of coding is about communication. That really stuck with me because I was like, that wasn't what was advertised. I don't want that. But
that's not what I signed up for.
But it was so true. Now I wish I could go back and be like, dude, that one sentence was a big, important mind shift for me because I never considered that. And it turns out that the majority of coding is communication and talking to people.
Talking to AI, you mean?
Yeah, well, AI is not people.
You're going to hurt its feelings.
AI are going to be considered people pretty soon here too.
Yeah, look at it thinking it's people.
Going back to the Hack Day, as someone who's run a booth or table or whatever for Hack Day a few times, it's so challenging because it's like you might have 4 people or more show up and it's like there's only one of you, and trying to coordinate and help them actually feel involved over the course of an hour, maybe 2, it's just impossible. All of the problems that I have are not that short and sweet and simple to solve in that amount of time. There's usually, like I was saying earlier about like if you want to contribute to Rails, there's a whole heck of a lot of context you need to know to actually do a PR sometimes. And that was always the problem that I ran into. It was just like, if you want to work on Notice, awesome, or pay, but like, it's not a trivial thing to contribute to at this point because it's either fairly solid in the way it is. Or if you want to add a new payment processor to pay, like it's going to take you a week or two or something, like not something we can do in an hour. I can maybe get you started, but that's about it. And it always felt a little bit sad because we would almost always walk away being like, well, we didn't really get much done here. And it didn't feel like you fulfilled the goal or whatever, even though maybe we did. Maybe the goal was just to get people who were strangers to talk together, talk to each other, and maybe contribute in the future and just like start the introduction that way. But at the end of the day, it just didn't feel like we accomplished anything.
Since I walked around them a few times, and I've noticed that sometimes there will be one person who is taking up an unfair amount of time from the person that is like, hey, let's have a little social awareness. Like, we're all here, we're all trying to learn, but you're over here talking this person's ear off about maybe this or maybe your own thing. And it's like, I don't know,
Or
it tracks from the whole thing.
Or like poor Rosa last time, just swamped at RailsConf's Hack Day with so many people interested in solid queue. And it's like, one person can't manage, 24 or whatever the number was. It was ridiculous. Her booth was packed.
Well, and conversely, there have been people who have like come away really sad because they're next to a really big project and this person's over here like, well, I've got my project too, and no one cares about that. So that could be really demoralizing too. It's like, hey, no one wanted to work on my thing, which sucks.
Yeah, there were definitely some of them that were just like empty. And I'd see the same people walking around 4 or 5 times. I don't know what to do here. I might want to jump in, but I also need somebody like the organizer of a booth to come up to me and ask me, hey, do you want to contribute to this or that or whatever? I don't know. I think the theory of the Hack Day is great, but I don't think it is as easy to pull off as it sounds like it's going to be. And it's always seemed a little bit of a struggle. And I like the idea of let's minimize it down. But honestly, I feel like workshops are just better in general than the Hack Day. Like, I would rather just see more workshops. Though almost all those Hack Day things could be a workshop where like the maintainer walks you through a contribution or a new feature or a recent PR or something from scratch and explains like all of the context and those types of things. Because then it gets those people familiar with the project and then they could contribute a new thing afterwards or something. It's always felt a little bit too open-ended that like makes it hard to have people jump in.
Yeah, presenting it like a workshop like that feels like it gives you as the maintainer a lot more structure instead of just hoping you've got something to work on that can fit into an hour, like you were saying. And so that's an interesting idea. I might bring that up.
If I was running that workshop at the end of it, I'd be like, and now congrats, because I'm going to add you, every single person here, as a contributor to this PR. So now everyone has an open source contribution. You at least get a contribution out of it technically, and that can then be like, oh, well, that was fun. Now my name is on this code base. What else could I do here?
I think I'm going to steal that idea, Andrew.
Steal it, dude. It's free for the taking.
The whole idea of having it kind of structured as a workshop and then encouraging them to do that. Yeah, I feel like that could go a long way to...
That was always the complaints, I think, of myself and like everybody else who was kind of invited to do a Hack Day. It was like, all right, you've got a booth. That's it. That's about as far as the instruction went. And there was zero structure to it. And that really felt, wow, I don't know what to prepare. And so I prepared nothing. Or like, I just read through the open issues and PRs, and maybe somebody will have the right expertise to pick up on one of these, and maybe they won't. And there was just not enough structure. But I think the workshops always work well. And I think people always feel like they got something good out of it because you want to get involved in a project. So like, if you want to contribute to Rails, it's like, well, I want to know what goes through the decision-making process that any of the Rails contributors, what are they thinking about? How do they, design a feature? How do they implement it? How do they think about how it's going to possibly break things, or how do they make sure that it's not going to break things? Just how do they think and work? That's what you're there for. And I feel like as an attendee of the Hack Day, that's what I want. So it's like, why don't I just make them basically workshops, you know?
Yeah. And you're going to get a lot more out. I feel like I get way more out of that than I would be trying to half-ass my way through some random issue I don't really understand in a library I've never really used or looked at.
Yeah.
You're going to come away with a lot more learnings out of that. Basically turn it into more like a mob programming session where, you have the driver, you try to get everyone involved, you talk about decision.
The hitman and...
Yeah.
Definitely. The Italian restaurant that you hang out in the back of, and...
I was literally just thinking about watching The Sopranos.
Yeah, there we go. I like that. That seems like good feedback for it. Just, I don't know how many years they've done the Hack Day. And there's been a lot of iterations on it. Yeah, I remember that one. We were invited to that, and it was a strange one because it was like we had a podcast table or something.
Did we? Was I there?
No. Colin and I were there, I think, at this table, and it was not the like coding focused Hack Day thing. I don't even remember if it was called that, a Hack Day back then, but it was strange. We had like nobody show up. So I think Stan Lowe came and hung out for a bit. It was just a flop for sure. We were kind of like...
That's why they put it in the middle, because no one was really attending that one. Because I think it was also an optional day. So like you could pay for that day or not.
Yeah, it was maybe the first day or something.
Yeah, it was the first of the last. I think it was the first.
Yeah, something like that. It was definitely strange. So the biggest feedback is it needs structure. People need, as an attendee, I don't know what the hell to do. And as an organizer, I also don't know what to do. But when you label it a workshop, everybody knows what to do. So
I remember last year, we tried to lean a little bit more into the structure of asking maintainers to come with issues that could be worked on. But even that, it feels like a very light touch request. And most of the time, you're going to be resolving those issues as you go. You're holding on to something to work on like that for a conference where you don't even know if people are going to show up. It feels off. Whereas like if it's more of a workshop environment, it feels like, okay, you can plan to have something for that because it's a workshop.
And then the workshop is hands-on.
Yeah. People know that they're going to a workshop, right? So they can front load some knowledge there too. Yeah. Like, hey, I know I'm going to be working. I want to go see Chris. His workshop is going to be working on this issue in the notice gem. We can go get a little understanding, a little context of this code base and what's going on and what it's doing. Because if you just walk into a room and you're like, oh, yeah, we have an issue you can work on here. And you're like, okay, well, maybe I know that library, but maybe I have no idea. And I'm just going to be a discouraging experience.
I think it was Detroit during the Hack Day. One of the people at my table spent the entire time trying to get their Ruby install and dependencies fixed. And that's where I ended up leading into like, we should just make a dev container so people can get up to speed really fast, regardless of their, local install configuration and stuff. And that was very disappointing to them because I know that we had a conversation about it afterwards. I really wish I could have done anything other than trying to debug this. And then it was like, I tried to help, but I could only help so much. And I'd feel bad working on that too much, getting pulled away from other people. And yeah, it's quite a challenging thing after all, like seeing this in the real world. In theory, it seems like it's so magical and easy, but it's like, I would rather learn something and take away stuff from that time with somebody who maintains, if Mike Perham's there and explaining some complex internal of Sidekick, that would be an awesome workshop. Whereas like, if you show up and you're like, hey, can I help fix a bug in Sidekick? It's got to be something trivial and you're not going to learn a lot from Mike. You'll be kind of assigned something like go figure it out yourself. all of the burden is on you as the contributor. And what you really want from that interaction is like, I would love to know more of the internals of Sidekick so I could debug it easier, I could contribute more, I could do whatever. And the only real way to accomplish that is if they explain the stuff to the audience there. So yeah, I do feel like the workshop direction of that fits almost perfectly. Gives both sides like what you want out of that interaction for a couple hours, where a talk can only go into something for 30 minutes or whatever.
Especially if you get like a Rails maintainer, that would be even more interesting. Is like, we already kind of talked about why that would be interesting. It's like, yeah, it would be super great to sit in a room and like listen to Raphael like talk through like how he would approach an issue, and you will be able to make yourself a better coder by learning the way these more experienced devs think about problems and approach solutions and how they debug things too. Like, so that would be a lot better.
Yeah, it would be really cool to have Tim Riley talking about the database section of Hanami or whatever it is and the internals of that, and maybe some current complex refactoring they're doing or whatever it is. I would have such a blast. I would be willing to pick any project that I wasn't familiar with too. You know, it wouldn't have to be something I was interested in. It could be something just that I knew I was going to learn stuff from. It could be anything, which would be good too.
That also lowers the barrier of entry, because then you're not thinking like, oh, well, I'm not smart enough to like be able to do this, so I'm just going to look like an idiot if I try. It's like, oh, well, I don't have to know. I'm just here to learn.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I think a lot of people are like hesitant to jump into something because they're like, I don't know if I'm capable of doing this in an hour or two, which is a very, very real mental barrier that is not stated explicitly, but is absolutely there. And you don't want to make a fool out of yourself at the conference. Like, that would not be good. And you don't want that. And you're afraid of doing that. And we're developers, so maybe we're a little bit, especially with strangers, maybe a little awkward or just shy and whatever. It just kind of removes a lot of those social things there.
Or maybe imposter syndrome especially strong that day.
Yeah.
Or just going back to something you mentioned before, or just like feeling like, it's funny that you said it the way you did because it really resonated with me. Just feeling like you need to be invited in. You feel that a lot. That it's really hard for me to kind of enter a space if I don't feel like I'm already part of the group. And so, yeah, making it more of a workshop environment makes it feel like everyone's automatically invited in because it's a workshop, where if it's just kind of the open hack day environment, that feels more like the onus is on me to go up and knock instead of being invited in. That takes a lot more mental energy to get over for me than I'm usually comfortable admitting.
Yeah, I've got the cheat code, and Andrew has the cheat code, and you will have the cheat code as well. Of people listen to the podcast, and so they'll like see you at a conference and just walk up and say hi and stuff because they feel like they've got a relationship with you because they've listened to you for 100 episodes or whatever ridiculous amount of one side. The funny thing is, it's such a one-sided, weird relationship because of how the podcast works. But
I experienced it once. The one time I've actually given a talk at RailsConf, it happened like almost immediately after the talk. And it was like, yeah, it blew my mind. It's like, wait. If I do more of this type of stuff, people will just come talk to me? This is amazing.
Right. Yeah. Because before that, I was afraid to go talk to people and stuff. And I remember Andrew at that one RailsConf was kind of like sitting on the outskirts of our table or something. And we're like, come on, join the group. And you have to be aware of that too. If somebody is kind of like, sorry, I don't want to butt in, but like, I'd love to listen to this conversation or whatever. It's like, expand the circle, but it just feels pretty awkward a lot of times. And some people are extroverted and that's no problem and whatever, but a lot of developers aren't. And so that's just one of the pain points that you want to think about when you're designing conference activities and stuff. So I do think workshops probably solve a huge amount of things around the idea of the hack day.
I've taken some notes that I'm going to put into the Slack channel suggest something other than how we've been doing the hack day, because I do think / hope that this would improve the situation for people.
You've got the biggest influencers right here saying it will, so it must be.
It must be true.
Has to be true. We just said it was true, so now it's true.
Is what we all trust everything that we hear or read or see on the internet.
Yeah, well, as long as it comes from us, right?
Yeah, or from Claude.
Yeah. My agent. You said it was weird, but I've never met a single weird remote Ruby listener. They're all such amazing, beautiful people, and I love you, listener, right now. Kisses.
Is this how we end the episode?
I got a kiss from Andrew today. Put that on a shirt.
I think that should be the title for this episode too. You're going to be listening to the whole episode. What the hell is this referencing? And it won't be until the very end that you get your kisses from Andrew.
Yeah, that's how it is, dude.
We also have to wear. We have to wear that on a t-shirt.
I know. We need merch. We need a merch that's like, I've kissed Andrew Mason. Or Andrew Mason kissed me.
I think I'm going to message Andy Kroll and be like, I got a new t-shirt idea for you. This is from Andrew Mason.
Yeah, that's what we need. Then we'll know who the squad is when we go to the next conference.
It's like when you go to Disney and your whole family has that same shirt.
Yeah.
There's just a group at Ruby Compo with it.
It's like, these are our fans. You can tell.
Oh, God. I think we have to end it there.
Yeah.